Hey, good evening, everybody. We got it's a fine Monday, I should say. We should even just start there. What a wonderful day it is. Lots of things going on around here at CAF HQ, but all of it good. And we get to start the week off. We don't do Monday shows as often as we used to, but we have the opportunity to have an extra interview today and tomorrow. We're going to start this one off with Francis. Now, Francis used to be here. The last time he was on our show was over 3 years ago. So, I mean, this is a repeat interview, 3 years in the making. A lot has changed in those 3 years. So let me bring Francis in, and we can talk about why we're having the show today initially, and why we ended up where we're at today.
Yeah. So I guess I originally reached out, because I would say around July and June, I sort of went through sort of some existential funk, in the hobby in itself. Like if I could explain it, it wasn't like there was one key event or something of that nature. It was just more, by the way, can you see me or? Bill? It's frozen on my end. Yeah, can you hear me?
I can hear you. I just see that my signal strength is low at the moment, so I'll check and see what's going on.
Oh, no worries.
Yep.
All good. Just it happens. I use CNN as my background. So I'm always used to seeing all the gaffes and errors. Where they're like, oh, sorry, we can't speak to you now. So it's good enough for CNN.
That's what happens with those live broadcasts. I think I'm back now, though, right?
Yeah, it seems like we're back in a crystal clear picture. So awesome. So to restart, as you know, I've been collecting for 12 years, and I would say, in July, I just sort of went through a bit of an existential funk. If I had to source it to any one particular thing, it was I just stopped reading comics, not because I didn't want to, but just because it was the case where there were just too many to read in a given week. When you're trying to read 30, 40 titles, it's like every week there's a backlog, and then it grows, and then, work gets in the way, and it wasn't like bad at work. It was good work, but, you get distracted. And it's amazing when you stop reading comics to, what are you chasing? What is the main impetus? I've been so preconditioned by the, art drop culture, led by Felix and a bunch, where it's like, at this time, all this art's going to drop. You have to be ready for it and make the split-second decision. It's still a bit blurry. Can you hear me, or should I just keep going? Bill?
Yep, keep.
Okay, I'll keep going.
Going.
And, you there?
I am here. Trust me. I can see you just fine. I know you can't see me, though. When it's I can see you just fine. I'm here.
All right. I'll keep going. Essentially, it was, the sort of thing where I was trying to ask myself, what do I want to do in comic art? Where do I want to go? What do I want to collect? How do I want to target? And, one of the key things I've always thought of was, when my collection was hitting above 300 pieces, why not sell a couple? But naturally, when, you collect certain pieces and you put some up, people are going to ask about the pieces you didn't put up. I was lucky to buy into a few Trad Moore pages, Sean Murphy, James Herron, a lot of guys, in the sort of golden days where, Daniel Warren Johnson was a couple of $100 a page, as opposed to, you see what happened with Transformers, and it's now a couple of $1,000 a page.
Yeah, they finally caught up with things, right? No more bargains.
And
that's okay.
Yeah, and it was just, a mixture of okay, I need to take a step back, rethink, what am I really emotionally attached to? You can't be like, oh, poor me, I have only so many pieces, I just felt it was a mixture of greed. It was a mixture of, so I said, okay, let me really push myself to value everything that I, in my heart, can at the market today. Just put it out there. don't worry about, what someone thinks. Just put the price that you could say you can sleep at night if this piece goes. And, I was able to have a lot of good conversations, talk with a lot of other people, other veteran collectors who have been really in the hobby for as long as I have, if not longer. And it really helped me realize that, sometimes you just get a bit stuck and you just need to get yourself back on track. So, after selling a couple of pieces that I was okay with, I started to feel very resistant. There was one piece in particular, someone made a good offer, and just when I was about to write it, my right hand wouldn't move. It was like, you're not writing that email. You're not writing that email. We're not sending it. And it just helped me realize, okay, I feel like I've sold what I've needed to sell. I'm, back into it. And I decided, okay, get rid of the massive albatross of a comic reading list, take a break, reframe, and then just jump back into the love of comics. I mean, the great thing about Marvel, DC, Batman, Superman, Iron Man stories, they're always going to move on a train. There's always going to be another train, a couple of minutes later to jump in on. And so I realized, I just need to do my own old-fashioned reboot or re-engineering of my Francis cinematic universe, so to speak.
Sure, but when we did the interview before, and I didn't go back and look at all the artworks that you picked, but I read the summary introduction of what I wrote, and a lot of the pieces that I mentioned, because I was just kind of doing my own overview of what your gallery looked like. A lot of those artists are pieces whom you still have art from. It wasn't like you really rebooted your collection, but maybe you looked at it and you didn't need the quantity, because I think I even noted at that time there were 500 pieces of art in your CAF gallery. Yeah. And I don't know, I had to go back and read it, but so it was in part just I wouldn't say it was a crisis moment, but it was one where you just realized you needed to kind of purge the Itoya pack.
Exactly. And again, what I purged to what I've even brought in, two of the pieces, or at least one of the pieces that I added to the 20 was something I got really lucky in a comic link. It was one of those, I cannot believe I won this, picks or what have you. But it was just, I think, again, sometimes I didn't need to do a hard reboot, but I just needed to do a soft reboot to reframe, clear my head, go on. I just didn't want anyone to think I was, Flipper McGee, because everyone hates when you see that page you won. It's dramatically overpriced. And then next thing you know, people are like, oh, what is he doing or what have you? Or is this guy trying to cash out and, get out or do a fire sale?
It happens, but I don't know. I think that it was clear that you were putting a lot of pieces on your site to sell on your CAF gallery. I mean, that's kind of how we got to talking about a month ago. Was we were thinking of doing this as some kind of an art sale show, really. And at the end of the day, you got to the point where you really didn't need to sell anything because it's been a month, and that was fine. So that's why I figured it'd be a good opportunity to Flipper McGee feels offended, says Marcus. This was a good time to just talk about that, because we had Michael McIsaac on last week. He was kind of going through a period in his collecting where he was paring things down and refocusing and maybe going after more important pieces versus quality over quantity sort of a thing. But the thing is, at least for you, I think you always had quality pieces in your collection, but you had a lot of them. And so it was a question of trying to figure out which ones to let go and which ones to keep. But how has your buying habits changed in the, say the last 90 days? I mean, did you kind of put all that on hold while you're figuring out what to pare down out of your collection, or did you continue to buy even though you were making a concerted effort to rid yourself of a few pieces of art?
So the thing about me is that I've always enjoyed leveraging payment plans to secure certain high value pieces. So even when, I have one foot out the door, I still have one foot in the door because I've honored commitments and I always honor my commitments. So that was one hilarious element on that front. But the other key thing I started to reframe was, okay, stop worrying about chasing one particular artist. I just realized, okay, there's certain artists that they're just becoming too expensive to chase anymore. Go back to what you want to do, which is chase the characters. Like,
And my internet has
oh,
dumped again. I'm here.
all right, cool. But it was just like, just chase the characters you want to chase. You know, worry about finding good Batman pieces, not, you know, say, look, I would be happy if I get lucky and get a Nick Dragata absolute Batman, but knowing Felix and just knowing where the market is, you know, it wouldn't surprise me if he already has offers up the wazoo, you know, similar to what happened with King in Black, what happened with Transformers. You know, it's just the inevitability of the market. So I think part of me is just trying to realize, like, go back to why I wanted to build, which was find good Batman pieces, find good Deadpool, find good Iron Man. Then, you know, feeling like I'm trapped on the roller coaster of one particular artist, because inevitably, and, you know, you see this with a few, their prices are just going to go higher and higher. And I realized this must have been what it was like for those following like Frank Miller, Todd McFarlane back when in the 80s, and, you know, their prices were reasonable, to now their prices are, you know, cornerstones of any given, you know, heritage or comic link auction.
That is true.
Yeah.
So is my video still flaky?
Yeah, but as long as you can hear me, if you need me to,
I can hear you just fine. I can tell when the I've got a little gauge in here, and I can see that it's at the low side. So I might be a little fuzzy and stuff, but I can hear you just fine. And I saw Alberto mention he doesn't like the expression quality over quantity, and I really shouldn't have meant it like, or said it like that, because at the end of the day, like I already said, Francis had a lot of high quality pieces. That's why I think it was a question of figuring out which pieces were most important to him, and so maybe I misspoke a little bit, but that wasn't meaning that he had low quality pieces at all. It's just if you can only have 5 great pieces from a particular artist. I mean, do you really need to keep them all? Can you pare them down and then maybe reset and maybe go after a new piece by that artist? That's really all I meant. Yeah,
it's again, I wouldn't say it's quality over quantity. I mean, because to me, quantity is so relative. You know, there's some people who hear how many pieces I own and think that's crazy. But just recently, I bought Bill. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine.
All right, cool. Like, there were some pieces that, like I talked to some collectors and they have, art collections in the thousands of pieces. Or, I know some that collect, like, can buy more complete issues in 1 month that would comprise more individual pieces than I've purchased over 12 years. That's just the nature of the beast. It's the joke of, like, you see at a blackjack table, someone betting $20 a hand and then someone betting like $500 a hand. And you're like, okay, this is, weird that you're all at the same, watering hole, so to speak. And, I think, again, that's one of the more interesting things about this hobby. It's that, again, you can get caught up in, just, I don't want to say price gouging, but more like just the nature of, the art economy. I feel that's more polite, because I don't want to, like, say it's any one particular sector. But look, when people buy into a certain artist, it just grows. It could be, a Trad Moore, could be a Ryan Stegman, could be a Jim Lee. It just inevitably happens. People all just start to gravitate, and, then you realize, oh, there are other artists coming down the pipe. There are other new guys, or pieces that you thought weren't on the table are on the table. And so it's just more a matter of, I think, sometimes you need to do a soft reboot and say, okay, what do you emotionally need to take with you? What would you say if there was a price out there? You could be like, okay, this maybe can put me in the door for something else to replace it. It's not goodbye, or it's not going to be the same, but it may be something different and something better as a result.
That makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
So, I was thinking, because of, how we're looking at this, maybe we should even look at some of the pieces that you decided to keep and talk about for the show tonight. Is that a cool kind of spot to jump in and take a look at a few things? I might even try to tinker with some of my network settings while we're showing a piece of art, just because I think it could be something related to my computer as I look around here. So let's see here. Why don't we I know this first piece is a Century cover, right?
Yes, this was a very recent entry.
Oh, good. So something that you picked up in the last few months?
I think it's not even a month old. Like,
wow.
funny enough, apologies, I don't want to blank on the collector's name. It was Michael. I got it from Michael Lovitz, and the joke was, he said he could mail it to me, but it turns out we lived like 2 blocks from each other, so we met at a local Shake Shack, and it was just really nice. What's sweet about this cover is that some of the earliest original art I ever purchased came from this issue, Century number 8, from a New York comic convention that Spencer Beck, just had like crates upon crates of, comic art pages. And I got 2 pages from that issue. And so to get the cover from that issue, and to me, I've always just found Sentry to be an interesting character because his worst enemy is himself. Just as he pierces through the void pierces through him. And I think, the Sentry's always been the great exploration of mental illness within, the Marvel universe, perhaps in a way that it's so complex that they can never really make Sentry an ongoing regular character, but, bring him in every couple of years because Sentry is just so overpowered that, you can't use him in a regular ongoing. It's kind of like seeing like a wrestler like Andre the Giant as an attraction. When you see him, you see him. And look, the Romita, Jenkins run on this was really incredible because, again, it's not, a happy ending. It's not a sad ending. It's the story of mental illness. You're going to have some good days. You're going to have some bad days. The bad days may come back, but you need to enjoy the good days while you have them.
Yeah, that's true. I really liked Sentry when it came out, and I was surprised I did because it felt kind of gimmicky at first. Just reading all the previews and Wizard and whatnot, it didn't feel like it was something that I was going to enjoy, and I was surprised that I really did actually think it was a pretty well written book. And you mentioned bins of art with Spencer. I mean, I think that's something many of us have experienced at one time or another. I mean, it usually would be at like New York Comic Con, right?
Yep.
But yeah, we've all had that. We're all our heroes too, I guess. I've seen him there and have gone through those a few times. It's always interesting to see what he what's available, since you can't tell from his website. But there's always some good stuff out there.
I mean, not to knock, but it's, put it this way, it's not the cleanest process, compared to say like, oh, this is how you do it or what have you. I've heard some good stories. I've heard some bad stories, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah. But at least with the the advent of live streams and those opportunities, I think it's probably benefiting the artists a bit more. But again, it's a great piece, and Mike Lovitz is obviously he's an elder statesman in the hobby, good guy to know. And I think he's got more art than many art dealers have. So he's come across a lot of things, and he's very knowledgeable, of course, about he reads a lot of books, and he's very current on so many things. So yeah, that's awesome.
But yeah, no, and I'm excited for the movie. I think Louis Pullman's going to do a great job.
Mm-hmm. Now let's see here. Oh, my next artist is somebody who I really, really like a lot.
Yes. So this was the piece in the Comic Link auction. This was also relatively within, I think, when was this? Like, did it end like 2.5 weeks ago? Or something of that nature.
Their last big one. It was probably about 2.5, 3 weeks ago. Yep.
This was one of those pages I can't believe I got. Like, this is perhaps one of the, arguably one of the pages that, helped me regain my spark for collecting. Because, I think there's part of me that had battled the cynicism of, okay, art is too expensive now. There are always too many people who are going to bid on something. I put in a bid on this thinking it was going to go even higher. And, it actually went a lot lower than what I had anticipated. And it was one of those few times where my cynicism was broken because I was shocked. I was really surprised. And this piece is special to me because I think one of the first commissions I ever did with Felix Liu was a hard-boiled homage of Einstein shooting Oppenheimer. And so to get the original page that commission was based on, and mind you, this was like one of the pages of Manhattan Projects. I mean, the idea of Oppenheimer, he was like the big star of the book. So for him to die that early on in issue 8 was pretty crazy. And again, I think, Manhattan Projects was to me one of those really cool Image comics that you can point to and say, this is what Image can do. These are the stories you can tell, the types of stories you can tell. And to have this where it's like you have Albert Einstein drinking a martini, looking at, Oppenheimer shot in the head while you have the ghost of Teddy Roosevelt of FDR, in a machine. Like, it's just sort of that craziness that, you really stop and look at the page and wonder what the heck is going on. And if there's anything about art, you want something that you want to point to and say, what is this?
Yeah, that's true. Number one Marvel fan, was curious what it ended for, but the thing is, it ended at a price you were very happy with, right?
Yes.
Well, that's always good. I mean, it doesn't happen often enough where where you're chasing a piece of art and it does actually end up in a place that surprises you. But
it was one of the few times in an auction where I can be like, yes, like I couldn't believe it, because 9 times out of 10, it's like, oh, you got sniped. Oh, someone outbid you. So to actually get it and to get this page, like, it was funny because, again, I thought this helped me bring things full circle with my collecting from Felix, because, again, this to get something that, 12 years ago or 10 years ago you did as a commission because you missed out on the page, to now get that actual page. There's something to that about the longevity of how long I've been collecting for.
Mm-hmm. I do remember that piece too, the commission piece that you had done. I think a lot of people remember that.
Yeah, I mean, look, the hard-boiled pose is a great one. I mean, Manhattan Projects, again, I think like, any great Jonathan Hickman story, you always want more. I hope there are more stories in the Manhattan Projects world, but he seems to have his hands full with, rebuilding the architecture for the Ultimate Universe after having successfully built, 3 worlds, 3 moons, and the architecture for, to me, what was my favorite run of the X-Men universe with the Krakoa era.
Mm-hmm.
That, again, I think, if you're looking for a great example of what an independent comic can do, I highly recommend Manhattan Projects. And this is just, to me, one of those pages where you talk to any fan, they can point to this page and say, that was a key moment.
Agreed. I saw Ian was lamenting the fact that he recently got sniped on Comic Link. That's lesson learned, right?
Ian, if it makes you feel any better, like my win-loss record in terms of auctions I've bid on Comic Link is worse than the Chicago White Sox, which are somehow even worse than, some of the most underperforming teams in baseball. So,
yep, when it goes to the baseball analogy, you're in trouble. Fortunately, I don't bid enough to feel like I'm getting sniped or performing poorly in auctions, but I totally get that.
It also helped that I had some money that had just come in from the sale. So, it was kind of like, okay, it allows me to feel like I just put A into B.
Right. Well, see, here I was thinking that, so these first 2 pieces are within the last 30 days of buying. Here I figured you were going to be on a slow progression to getting back into buying, but clearly not. The addiction never ended. It was just a reassessment, I think.
Again, it's not like I did, I think to your point, I didn't do a Crisis on Infinite Earths. I did like a sort of, a Marvel Civil War, where they kind of did like, they tilted the axis 30 degrees, but they didn't, fundamentally destroy the entire Marvel universe as a result.
Understood. Let's see, what do we got next here? It's
oh yes,
by Tradd Moore.
Yep, this was from the one of Felix's very rare Tradd Moore art drops. I think this was the first in, I'm forgetting, like in a couple of years where it was a dedicated, I'm dropping an issue of Tradd Moore art. This barely comes maybe once in a blue moon, maybe like the last one, I can't even remember when it was, but it was definitely in the, a couple of years. And it was one of the more expensive pieces in the drop. And I just was like, okay, there's too much detail in this. I love this page. I love how you can stare at it for 5 minutes only to then maybe fully get every single piece of action going on. But to be able, once you see it, to then be able to follow the action through. I mean, look, this sets the record for the most amount of money I've ever spent on one particular art page, and I'm just speechless. Like, look, Doctor Strange, Silver Surfer, those are two of those, like, when someone does a great, story in that world, you go for it. And I mean, just like, look, I could spend an hour going through this panel by panel, but to me, I think it just shows you like the fight, the skill, the luck, the frenetic action. Like, you get an entire, in my opinion, obviously I'm biased, 30 pages of story in one page with trad. So yeah, I would have to say it's hands down the most expensive piece I've ever bought, and it probably will be, because I can't see anything topping the investment I put into this one page.
Yeah, no, I hear you. When did I spend the most? I think it was about a year and a half ago when I bought a Cock from X-Men page, and not from issue 150, but it was the end page, and at that moment it was the most expensive piece of art I'd ever bought. But and right now I firmly believe it will be forever be the most expensive piece of art I bought. But I know how that feels, like when you get something that you really like, something special like this that is hard to get in a drop with Felix. Yeah. I mean, when you were going after this piece, did the site freeze? Did you have any
I mean, I'll tell you what, I was dreading was that around the time of the drop, I had to drive into work. I had to take a lift into work. So I was doing it on my phone, not my computer. And I've always had bad luck when I, do a drop on my phone, because I'm just not as fast. And I think ultimately, the way I got through it was that there was a bit of a sticker shock, even for Trad Moore pieces, that I was able to commit to it. But I'm so happy I did, because, look, I missed out on Silver Surfer Black. I think the page I wanted from Silver Surfer Black was a lot like this page here. And, this is Generation 3 Trad. I mean, I always talk about how there was the Trad more of like the Strange Talent of Luther Strode, the second generation where he was doing like Marvel variant covers, DC variant covers, the Legacy, or sorry, what was the second one? Strange Talent, Legacy, the Legend of Luther Strode. And then when you finally get to like Silver Surfer Black and onwards, the modern era, that's where Trad just found a new gear. So to have a real piece that reflects his new gear of art style, I think is really impressive.
Yeah, well, I think he did really well, and I had a feeling like something like that might have been going on. Like you said, a little bit of sticker shock, as they go, but not in a bad way. It's like, oh wow, yeah. They finally priced everything the way you feel like they should be, or the way they're seeing, what the aftermarket is on these things, and that caused a bit of hesitancy from some of the other buyers.
Well, I think, look, here's the truth. What people always have to remember with art is that, when I was selling, there were some saying, well, I can't, buy this because, so Felix or someone, had just sold it for X amount of dollars, like a few months ago or a year ago. It's really hard, to say bring in comps, because it's like I was pricing with my heart and my own psychological, mental health, at the forefront, not what the market was saying. And again, you have, when it's any piece of art, whether it's $100, like page from like, the 1980s or 1990s, or it's, a AAA top tier page from a very in-demand artist, you need to feel like that emotional nerve, because fundamentally buying one-of-a-kind art pages is an irrational science. It's not, something logical to say like investing in a particular stock where you're looking at, okay, what is their, return on investment? How much debt does the company carry? You're really going from the heart. So that has to really keep you going, because if you lose that spirit behind it, if you're just going in to buy something to flip it 2 years later, it's jaded. I mean, it just sort of like feels like you're gambling more than you're really pursuing a passion, if that makes sense.
Oh yeah, I totally get that. And I saw in the chat, Corey said, "You got any Wayshack evolution?"
Oh, I have quite a few pieces of Wayshack, but you got the one page I was willing to sell, Corey.
So there you go, Corey. You got your one, and you're done.
Like this was the thing. Every now and then, we all see, pieces in certain collections where you see the not for sale, and that collector means not for sale. It's not happening. But then every now and then, the vault opens. And when the vault opens, you have to move when the vault opens. My vault was open for a month. I literally was like, I'm literally trying to, say, put your prices out there. Feel like the $1 Million Man, Ted DiBiase, like, I'm the $1 Million Man. Everyone's got a price. Put it out there. See what happens. Then close the vault. Because, again, I wasn't trying to do a John Fisher, I'm manipulating the city of Oakland to move the team to Las Vegas. I was trying to, just be smart and build myself, psychologically right to continue collecting for the next 10 years. Because, look, this hobby is evolving. Shaggy, I've been collecting maybe since, I would say, really like published pieces since maybe for 12 years. Maybe if you can turn the clock back an extra 2, if we're talking like commission, like those little head sketches you would get at the DC or Marvel booth, before they became heavily politicized.
Yeah, you've had a CAF Gallery for about 12 years, I think.
Yeah. Well, that was when I learned about CAF, and I was like, oh, I got to upload everything.
There you go. We twisted your arm.
Yeah.
All right. What do we got next here? We got something from Venom.
Well, this is the page that, was from the last interview we did.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And this is the page where if I had to, I come from a, Roman Catholic family, but if there was any part of my soul in one particular piece of art, it would be this page. This would be the page that, like, I don't care if I'm homeless. I do not care, like, what have you. This page isn't going anywhere. I will literally bury this page, or put it in like an Indiana Jones style temple if I need to. Because to me, it's that one page that represents everything about collecting. You just follow the sequence. Venom is happy. He's about to kill one guy. He sees another guy, like almost the identical guy, down the pike, gets happy at that and wants to go after him. And that's sometimes how I collect. It's just like, you go like, okay, thank you. In the vault, now this one. In the vault, now this one. And, I think it's just, my perpetual reminder of how greed can, take over, and Venom is one of those impulsive characters where, he has a lot of power, he makes some mistakes. So, you feel a connection to it. I mean, I really love what Tom Hardy has done with the character in the movies, because I think they sort of show the degree of self-destruction and impulse that, the Venom Eddie Brock symbiote has to sort of manage. So to me, if there's one page where it's like part of my soul is in this, it's this page.
Yeah, it's a great page. It really is. Layout's good. It's fun. And I love that second to last panel, the one I focused in on.
For me, it's that last one in the far right. I loved that panel, but I just love the smile Venom has when it's like, I got it. Yay.
Mm-hmm.
But it also feels like it can repeat because it's like, again, it's kind of like that never-ending clock of, you see something you love it, but then you see something afar, and then you need to get that.
Yeah, that makes sense. Now, this is going back over to a little bit DC, Batman Beyond, Chris Samney.
So, oh, yeah. So this was another recent pickup, and this was a piece that I got, perhaps when I was in my darker period of art collecting, because, again, you can tell it's a pretty intense one of, McGinnis, burning the Robin uniform, in front of his brother. And I thought, okay, this reflects the darkness of my, collecting mood at the moment. And, look, Batman Beyond, I grew up with the 90s cartoon. I thought it was one of the best things ever because they got Kevin Conroy to voice old Batman. So, you really felt there was a degree of continuity if you had invested in Batman the Animated Series. And again, it's so hard to find like really top tier AAA Batman Beyond pieces where you're like, okay, this really reflects how much I love the character, because, let's face it, DC does not show the love to Batman Beyond that they should. Like, I remember seeing at one point someone tried to pitch a Batman Beyond animated movie because they thought Batman Beyond could be, DC's answer to Miles Morales, in the Spider-Verse. I think it really can. And again, I think there's just something to that tech cyberpunk nature that people embrace. It was the edgier Batman while saying you're not giving up on Bruce Wayne. You're just feeling a part of a larger story.
Now, on this piece, I see that at least when I look at your CAF gallery, you only have one piece by Chris in your collection. I mean, do you have other pieces by him besides this one, or is it really?
So knowing Chris from like the way he always posted his art, it always used to be, he would sell his doodles, but he would never sell any of his Daredevil art, or it was really hard to come by. Oh, yeah. I at one point owned an art piece from one of the things he did in the run up to Captain America 700, because that was like one of the first few times he posted his art out there. I eventually sold that because, well, I like Captain America. I didn't feel emotionally as connected to Captain America. That was something where I'm like, okay, I know you wanted a piece from this guy, but you got a good offer for it. Maybe you switch to something else or find another great example. So again, Sam Nee is, one of those guys where there's just so limited art available, but I don't feel, say, as emotionally connected to him as I would say my personal big three, which are, Tradd Moore, James Herron, and Sean Gordon Murphy. Those are perhaps my big three at the moment. But, this was just a great piece where I'm like, okay, this really represents the time that, I tried to, get up early on Saturdays to watch Batman Beyond.
Yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense to me too. I was just looking at the next piece. I want to highlight this one. It's really well done, and I'm not very familiar with Cagle's work. Okay. But this is beautiful. This is from Dawn Runner 2.
Yep. So Cagle, I think he was chasing his art was perhaps one of the issues that I would say one of the many symptoms that led to my sort of comic art cynicism, because, originally I caught wind of him like many when he was doing the Detective Comics variant covers. And you were like, wow, this is really cool art. Like, this isn't digital. And I think I put in for one or two pieces, I got an email back. I sent an email back 5 minutes later. I'm in, but it was like, someone beat me to it. And I'm like, oh man, if I knew, or if there was a drop or there was a time. And, when he was doing Dawn Runner, I was like, okay, I'll try one last time. Odds are this is probably already sold. And then they said, oh, it hasn't been sold. So I put in, for the page I wanted and the cover I wanted. And lo and behold, I got a positive response. And this thing is, 18 by 24. I normally collect 18 by 17. And the fact that this was all done on scratchboard, I mean, to do this level of detail on scratchboard, it hurts the brain. Because again, it feels like you have to use a knife for every single stroke. So to be able to do this by hand, it really stops and gives you pause about, wow, just when you think you've seen everything in this art hobby in 12 years, there's still something new you're going to see. And that's part of the excitement that, you still get from reading comics. You're going to see something in a style you did not think was possible in this day and age.
Yeah, I like to see experimentation like this as well. Just being the fact that it's not done on scratchboard makes it all the more interesting to see.
Yeah, it's, again, one of those cool pieces because you can look at the blades of grass in the bottom and say it's almost on par with, the way he designed the kaiju or the way he designed the mech or even the fire or the, brush in the aftermath. It really, covers every element. And yeah, I will admit though, I was bummed that this piece didn't, hit the featured because I thought it would. But again, I know what it is. It is what it is.
Well, a lot of times we only we can only
I know.
see as much as we can see in a given week. But yeah, had I seen this, I would have added it for sure. But it was probably when did you pick this up?
I think it had to have been maybe February or March. I thought there was a chance because someone commented like, "Oh, Chris Norick, has to see the high resolution image." So I thought, "Oh man, maybe there's a chance this piece will get some momentum." You know, but
I
it's
see,
just
yeah,
it is what it
Chris
is.
did actually comment on it. I'm looking at it on your site or in your CAF gallery right now. So who
But
knows?
yeah.
You never know. I can't say that.
Look, I've gotten a couple of the featured art of the day, so I cannot complain. It was just one of those where you're like, yeah. I mean, put it this way: the fact that this is 18 by 24 on a scratch board. I mean, I don't think I'll ever own something else as intricate as this. Just in terms of the sheer number of, like to do something on scratch board is like flying through a hurricane. It's really difficult to do it at that magnitude considering the complications of it. So yeah, it's not like something you can easily erase, like pen and ink. It's once you make that stroke, you're locked in.
Yeah, well, it's fantastic. And if I had seen it, I think I would have put it in my top 10 for the week.
Well, I'll submit it for, the best of 20. So.
Exactly. It has another chance to get recognition, which is really what the best of is all about.
And hey, I'm showing it here, so I cannot complain.
Well, this one feels like it should be up on your wall. I mean, I know that somebody was asking if you had any art on the walls, because obviously we can't see any art on the walls, but that piece right there would be one that I think qualifies for.
I'll frame this. I should put my art on the walls, but again, part of me is always worried about, a fire or an earthquake or something, and what do I do? And so, my priorities have changed a bit because, hold up.
Put it by the front door. And it's scratch.
I'll show you why.
So you don't have to worry about it fading.
The first person I want to make sure I get out of the fire is this little guy.
Is your roommate's dog.
Who, again, isn't maybe the smartest tool in the shed, but, I do not want him to get burned. Mm-hmm. After him, and after getting him to safety, then I would go after all my art. And again, it's just something where I just need to feel safe. I mean, why I'm happy where I live is because I'm across the street from a fire department and down the street from a sheriff's office. So it's like I literally have the
lowest property insurance rate imaginable.
Yeah, so it's like I literally have every possible outcome just short of, like a meteorite or an earthquake or something where you're like, okay, I'm going out with all the art. I've done it. I've won.
Sure. Well, here's this next page. We don't have enough art with this character in it on CAF. I can tell you that right now. RoboCop is not well represented on Comic Art Fans.
Well, I think the hard issue with RoboCop is that the license, even from day one, there were issues with the RoboCop license. And this page I got, was a personal love letter to my dad and my grandpa, because my grandpa, God rest his soul, he, like, when he looked after me when my parents were away, he thought it was okay for like a 3-year-old to watch RoboCop, which is not something a 3-year-old should watch. And, so again, I always thought RoboCop was cool, and that was the problem. The kids loved RoboCop just as much as the adults loved RoboCop. And then you see what happens in RoboCop 2 and 3. They increasingly tried to make RoboCop more kid-friendly. And because of that, it destroyed the essence of the greed and commercialism and violence that was fundamental to RoboCop's existence. And then they tried so many different reboots. I watched the Joel Kinnaman movie. I liked it, but I was just sad that it, put RoboCop back in the vault for another period of time. I was really happy with the video game because they brought back Peter Weller, and I thought they did a better RoboCop 3 that, RoboCop 3 wasn't. And again, I just thought I needed something RoboCop connected because RoboCop is, a sort of cartoony character. It's something tied to me personally. So it was something where, again, I wish that there was a great RoboCop ongoing. I have hope, though, considering what Daniel Warren Johnson is doing with Transformers, what you're seeing Declan Shalvey about to do with Terminator. So I have hope that someone's going to say, okay, we need to really give RoboCop his due with, a top tier writer, a top tier artist, and really a long ongoing that can really help, flesh out the RoboCop universe.
Sure. Now, this next piece, I think, was a recreation, right? Now, is this one that you had done personally?
Yeah. I had this done by Nick Dragata. This was on Nick Dragata's last list from Felix.
Mm-hmm.
I don't really do commissions anymore because when they've gotten a bit more expensive than I'd like, and at the same time I was running out of, interesting ideas that I was looking forward to. And, I always remembered with Nick Dragata that he does something really unique with the jaws of his characters, like the actual mouth jaw, where it just feels a bit more slack, a bit more, disconnected, yet somehow anatomically correct. And, I thought, okay, if there's anyone that can do Hulk 340 right, it would be Nick. Because again, what makes Hulk 340 work, in addition to the blades, in addition to Hulk, is Wolverine's face. And what, I was always open for is like the artist putting their own individual spin, not trying to recreate, Todd line by line. And what I love about this is that he really made more of an effort on Hulk's jaw than he did Wolverine's. And that was simply by, tilting the perspective of the image by like 30 degrees or what have you. And again, I think that shows you what incredible innovation you can still find today with modern artists, recreating masters of the previous generation.
Makes sense. Now, you have a fair number of recreations in your CAF gallery. I think there's 17 that you have posted.
Yeah, well, that's just, the sad element of like, look, I wasn't alive, when Frank Miller was selling his Dark Knight Returns art. I was -3 years old, I believe, at the time. There's just some art I'm never going to be able to own, or even if I could, I would need to have such an obscene amount of capital where I could justify it, even mentally. So to me, sometimes getting a recreation from a modern master, it's like me saying, okay, I've really shown my dedication and love to this piece by getting a top tier guy to do it, than, necessarily, feeling like I need to chase the bigger thing because it wasn't my era. So if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Well, here, I'm gonna highlight. Let's see if I close this one, bring this in here. This is a very nice one by Paulo.
Oh yeah. That's always a special one because I think that was that was the first time I ever met you, funny enough.
Yeah, I do remember that. Yeah, Paulo's, he's a treat. He's solid. I can't say I've ever seen a piece done by Paulo that I dislike. And I remember this piece distinctly. It's fantastic.
Well, I thought it was just, a fun way to do something different because at that time, and, I think even more so, he would only do head sketches.
Yeah.
And so I was thinking, okay, well, this Daredevil cover is essentially a glorified head sketch with a gun. And, it was just like, oh, if you pay a little extra, he'll do it. And I'm like, okay, let's do it. And I'm glad I did.
Yeah, wise choice. Yeah, it's amazing. I'm envious of this one, but yeah, congrats on it.
It was up for sale when the vault was open, so I'll just say that.
The potential for a sale was there. I'm not a buyer that often, so I actually didn't even go through to see what you were listing for sale. It's just because we were beta testing the app. It was like every day I was scrolling through a dozen things by you when I was testing things. So that's how I was seeing the fact that you had the sale going on.
Well, I'll frame it this way, and maybe this is a message for everyone watching. Never underestimate the comic art classifieds. Never underestimate them. You don't know what you'll find. A lot of days, you may find crickets or the same stuff, but it's kind of like why I love, Comic Art Live. You see things that you didn't think would be up for sale and you have to go for them.
I agree with you. That's we need more people thinking like you. But then again, I think the last time I looked, we have about 37,000 pieces of art in the CAF classifieds,
Yeah.
believe it or not. So
that's the thing. It's one thing when a dealer sells. It's another thing when, you have the collectors selling along with the dealers. Mm-hmm. Because normally a lot of the collectors get nervous selling next to the dealers because then the dealers think they're Flipper McGee, and again, that's always like, a tension point. You don't want to hurt your relationship, with the dealers because no one wants to feel like, oh, they missed out on this or that,
Yep, I get it. Carl's got the problem that most of us have, but I totally get it. I was just talking about that not even a week ago about Comic Art Live, and the classifieds can get rolled into that too. It's collectors getting out there and testing the waters with pieces of art for sale, and that will always be exciting, irrespective of whether or not you're going to find something you like every time you go to Comic Art Live. The bottom line is you're because a lot of times you're getting collectors trying to do that for the first time, price their artwork, put it out there. It's not an easy process. I mean, just ask anybody who's tried to do amateur dueling dealers and just pick 20 pieces for sale. It's not an easy thing to go through. But as buyers, it's fun to watch our peers go through the struggles of trying to price and choose which piece of art to put out there in their Comic Art Live booth or for an AD match.
Funny enough, that Century 8 cover was in Michael's Comic Art Live, and that's where it came from. So again, thanks to Comic Art Live, I have one of those pieces that really ties to me, in a way that I was collecting full circle.
Very cool. Now, this next artist is one that we definitely don't talk about enough on CAF.
Oh boy!
Why, but Dave Wachter, so he's amazing talent. Kind of relatively new in his own right, I guess. But the thing is, he's just so damn skilled, and this is a very nice piece.
This piece I had to bring up because, I'll frame it this way. I bought this on January 7th. I think I actually had to check my email correctly for this. I want to get the date, correct. I bought this from a particular dealer on January 17th. By late January, maybe early February, a certain, there was a certain controversy, and that dealer was, almost non-existent at this point. And I'm talking about Cadence, obviously, because this was something where, I figured, okay, let me see what art is going up for sale. Like, I'm looking at the timeline of my emails. I reached out like on, I think it was January 8th or something of that, or like December or January. And then, by the time I got the piece in the mail, like physically at my home, then I start seeing, oh, no one's associated with Cadence Comic Art. Everyone's leaving Cadence Comic Art. Everyone's leaving Cadence Comic Art. And I'm like, what the heck is going on? I felt like I was on, the last chopper out of Saigon, and I didn't even know I was on the last chopper because I'm literally trying to do the math in terms of like, I literally got this piece right before everything fell apart. And I was just like, wow, to get a piece, like if there was ever a finale to Cadence, it was, okay, I've technically gotten the first ever published image of the new Punisher that would later turn into a variant cover. I'm like, if there was a finale, but wow, I mean, if this was 2 weeks later, I could have been out quite a bit of money, or I could have been, like many who felt fleeced. So this is that piece where I was like, wow, I literally got it right before the Boulder closed in the Indiana Jones temple, right before everything. So this piece I look at with a sigh of like, wow. Now, all that craziness aside in this hobby, because I still quite don't understand what happened there. And I don't think Penny will until, there's a clear story of what's been told. Again, the Punisher was always one of my favorite characters. I kind of understood why Frank Castle needed to go. The sad part was his symbol had become appropriated by, certain individuals. So they needed a new Punisher in place. And I just love the story of how it worked, because this guy wasn't trying to be the new Punisher. It was organically put upon him because his shield, his, body armor just technically resembled the Punisher skull. And I thought they did it in a way where you're like, whenever you see a new character come in to take the place of the previous guy, you get very cynical. But they did it in a way where you're like, oh, doesn't even want the title, which is exactly what the Punisher wants. He doesn't want to be the Punisher. He literally had that moniker bestowed upon him. So I thought they did this character in a very interesting way. I'm excited for them to do more with it. And again, you look at like Ghost Rider, Moon Knight, so many characters, this is one of the first real times where they said, let's officially pass the torch on the Punisher mantle to someone else. And I thought this is a great opportunity because, God knows I'll never get the first appearance of Frank Castle. That's a 7-figure piece, in my opinion. It's up there with, the first appearance of Venom. But, to say that, for getting a character, that's tied to the Punisher, I am a bit biased because the first Punisher was named Frank and my name is Francis. But again, I think this was a cool way of reflecting, one of the early comics I read, growing up in New York and New Jersey. So I'm really happy I got this. And put it this way, if God forbid I ever have to sell this one day, I will help, make sure Dave gets some of the money, because I feel everyone got a hard time with Cadence, because that I just like, it just doesn't sit right,
Sure. Well, congrats on getting something by Dave. Like I say, I've always admired his stuff, and he's a modern artist that I do hope to actually get the opportunity to meet and pick up something from one day, because I just really admire his skills. I mean, and this is a fantastic piece. Congrats on this one.
Thank you. I need to go to a convention and meet this guy, because again, like I know, again, it's weird. Like this is one of the few artists I've bought from that I haven't met at a convention yet.
All right. Now somebody who gets out to a lot of conventions, Rob.
A lot of conventions and then some. I will say one of the key things that, really helped me reconnect with my joy, in my sort of July cynicism, was seeing Deadpool and Wolverine. I think they did that movie in a way where they said, on top of just seeing like Hugh Jackman and, all these other great characters from previous Fox movies, it's really about trying to, say, we want these characters to matter. We want to matter, which can feel very difficult in an age where, if your thing doesn't make a lot of money outright, you get rebooted 2 minutes later. And then you feel like, well, what was all the commitment for? And, I collected a lot of great Deadpool pieces in the past, one from Trad that I really love. But I realized I never owned anything from Rob. His covers were always a bit high, out of my price range, where I just couldn't commit to them, because if you look at a lot of his covers, they're, very static, look, Rob can do that and he can charge that way because that's the demand of his market. And thankfully, there was a limited time where he had opened the vault to sell some pages from Bad Blood and Batter Blood. And, I thought if there was ever a chance to get my hands on a Rob Liefeld original head to toe, I'm really happy I have something from the creator of Deadpool, because I love how this guy doesn't take anything seriously, yet shows how even with his goofy misdemeanor, he's really confident, skilled, and calculated, because that's the key thing. You can make your jokes, people can laugh at you, people can underestimate you, but when Deadpool needs to get into Deadpool mode, he'll always deliver.
No, I agree. It's a good page.
Thank you.
I like this one a lot. Head to toe is a rarity. that is true, Richard. But you
get hit. Rob Liefeld technically drew feet twice.
Now this next one is going to be a controversial pick, but we're going to show it. Let's see here. Some computer generated art.
Oh, okay. All right. The talk about computer generated art. Mm-hmm. All right. First off, here's my whole take on this. Artist proofs, are by no means does an artist proof hold at the standard of an original art piece. Not saying that. But at the same time, I do acknowledge a lot of digital artists have done some great things. They've drawn some great pages. And sometimes, when I've spoken to a lot of artists, like you bring up someone like Dave Wachter, for example, the problem you get is that so many of these pages you want to go after don't exist because modern deadlines require people using computers. I remember even Todd McFarlane doing a panel where he explained, like, look, I can do something on pen and paper and it can take me X amount of time, but if I do it digitally, I can literally, churn out an entire book, or if not faster. Like he said, like, let me show you, I'll draw a Spawn sketch, and then I'll draw it digitally and show you what I can do digitally in the same amount of time. I don't have anything against anyone going digital. And I do think digital artists should have the ability to say, hey, I created something cool. I should be able to have something in the original art hobby. That being said, I feel when digital artists, charge at the same prices as they would for original art, then that's a bit of a resistance point. To me, I would consider digital art the sort of relief pitcher, not the closer, not the starting pitcher, but that guy you need in the seventh or the eighth inning to sleep easier at night. And, I really love the character of Failsafe. I thought it was a really brilliant addition to the Batman lexicon. The idea of Batman being so paranoid he would create a backup personality, and then that backup personality being so paranoid it would create the Terminator. I just thought, okay, this is a really special character. I love how they really executed him. They made him justified, made him relevant. He's one of the big bad guys in DC's Absolute Power miniseries right now. They put a lot of capital into it. So I thought, okay, if DC's putting a lot of capital into it, I should put some capital into my fandom. And, even though this was the first appearance, it was digital. But I thought, okay, one of one artist proofs are holding, in my opinion, because of integrity. You don't see someone selling 20 different variations as you tend to see with NFTs. So look, I have the paper trail and I'm okay with that. And I think, look, I paid, I thought, a reasonable sum. And you just have to realize that you have to be careful in terms of what you invest in. But I think one of one artist proofs are now being done in a way that can help younger people with lesser means get into this hobby. And you always need to have gateways into the hobby. Look at what Omega did, for example. Omega, watches, they do the Speedmaster, the watch that went to the moon. They also do the Moon Swatch, where they just dressed up a swatch to look exactly like the Omega Speedmaster. That isn't by any means supposed to compare to their beautiful watch. But it's a gateway for younger people to get into the ecosystem because they feel priced out. So I don't have anything against digital artists. I just think that the artist proof era has to be done very careful and with a degree of, integrity. Because again, if I start seeing, this piece being sold as a one of one artist proof, I'll be like, okay, what is your timestamp? Because I have timestamp in correspondence that, takes me back. So look, it's a modern way of thinking, but I wouldn't put as much money into digital art as I would say I've put into physical art. And when I do, it has to be for some special reason, like this was the first appearance. If this was just a panel page, couldn't get there, but there was some historical provenance here.
Got it. No, I mean, it's a very nice piece, but yeah, it's something that's not for everyone who collects OA, but it's to each their own, and it's definitely not the only piece of computer art that you have in your CAF Gallery. I know we're going to see another piece in a little bit too, but this next artist is one that I feel everybody should have at least one piece by this artist in their collection, and that's Giorgio Camolo.
Oh yeah. So funny enough, this piece I'm happy to own because I know this was featured, because that's how I first came across this piece, and I just thought it was brilliant. Again, similar to why I did the recreation of, Hulk 340. All Giorgio did was just change the perspective of Spider-Man on the Amazing Fantasy cover, and he made it more dynamic. I feel like Spider-Man looks more like his anatomy makes more sense. I love the anxiety. I love the feeling like you get more of the frenetic nature. It's one of those things where, to me, a good recreation or homage is done right when it makes you feel like, wow, I kind of like this more than I do the original piece. that's not to take away from the original piece, because there's always a spirit to that. But again, I think I remember hearing the Amazing Fantasy 15 art is in the National Archives. So to me, when you're getting a recreation, it has to be something that makes you feel like, okay, I've really shown my love and commitment to that one particular image. And the nice thing was that, thankfully when it went up for sale, someone bought it, but then thankfully that guy posted it on Comic Art Fans. And I said, I will literally pay you double what you paid for it. And he was just so happy to get a quick dollar. I'm like, sweet, done. And I'm just relieved because I love this piece. It's really one of my favorite commissions because it just works. Like, I can't describe it. It's like you've really given Spider-Man a bit more confidence that I wish he had in Amazing Fantasy 15. Because that's one of the key things about Spider-Man. He has the confidence. He's just self-destructive in how he manages his personal life. But he has the confidence. And in here, you really see that.
That's true. I highly recommend Kamolo for really any kind of commission-based work. He does great work for cover recreations like this. He always puts his own spin on it. Yeah. Or any character that you're interested in. I'm sure he would do a great job. Number one Marvel fan mentions his Galactus. He's done a fair number of Galactus related commissions or cosmic related commissions. He's just one hell of a talent. He has like a Kirby infused style, but his approach to layout and his choice of color when he does a full color piece are just outstanding. And this is fantastic.
I mean, it's also really cool because if you look at the timestamp, this was a commission done in 2000. So the fact it's already 24 years old, I think shows you like, oh, commissions do have a long life, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah, without question. If anybody goes and seeks out the CAF Cribs video I did with Mike Berkey, there was one of his rooms. He literally has at least 8. Are they really cover? They're cover reinterpretations, I guess you could say. You'd have to go and see, that video just to kind of pan across them. And they're all huge. They're like 2.5 by 4 foot tall. I mean, they're gigantic, but they'll blow your mind just to see them. Like the amount of, again, it's thoughtfulness that he puts into his recreations. He doesn't do line for line. He really does he reinterprets, which is amazing.
Well, that's what you want, because if they did it line for line, beat for beat, you would feel okay. It's kind of like what happened with the Watchmen movie. Zack Snyder was great at recreating the comic book line for line, almost beat for beat as you could in a movie. And people felt a bit like, oh, well, I enjoyed it, but it was kind of like what I had already read. It's like then you see what happened with, Watchmen, the HBO miniseries, where it was able to reinterpret the concept of Watchmen in a way to tell the story of the Tulsa Massacre and other elements that really helped open the door to like, oh, now I'm interested in Watchmen. I want to know more about this world and universe because I saw this miniseries. So I think, putting your own spin on things, and you see this in the Marvel movies all the time where they'll recreate certain covers, certain images, just because people want to see like that pose or that frame and, just see a different take on it.
Mm-hmm. I agree. All right. What do we got next here? Now, this is the artist is Sam Wolf Connolly.
Yep. This was one of those covers that I was like, you ever read a comic book or you see a cover and you're like, I don't care how, I don't care what I have to do, I need to own it. This was one I needed. So this was tied to a comic book called Rogues. I highly recommend it. I don't have it pulled here. Let me look up the timestamp. I think it was 2022. I'm just looking at the date.
Yeah, April 2022 when you posted it.
Yeah, so this was one of those DC Black Label books, and where the idea was, it imagines Flash's rogues, all in their late 60s, early 70s, trying to do one last score before they all die, just to sort of go off into the sunset. And, it was a really well done story about Captain Cold and the rogues, like why they, were who they were, what happens to criminals when they're in their late age. And, it was just a great story of like Captain Cold, despite being an old man with not much left to live for, still finding that desperate, spirit or nerve to go on. And Sam Wolf Connolly, I thought he's an artist I'd never seen before. He rarely dips a toe in the comics. And I just love the, anxiety yet confidence you get from this pose. You see Captain Cold getting ready to shoot, and there's a hint of fear, but a hint of confidence, like he's done this before. And I just thought, this is a great way to respect one of the Flash's greatest enemies, who doesn't quite get his due, because let's face it, when he's in a blue and white parka that feels very dated, it's really hard to justify them.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, it's just one of those things where I'm like, okay, you've really shown and justified the rogues that, in my opinion, have been a bit undervalued recently, because Jeff Johns, was the master of justifying the rogues. But when he left, I felt Flash sort of fell by the wayside as a result. So again, this was just something where I thought this really is a statement to why I got into comics. One of the first comics I vividly remember reading seriously was, a villain profile on Captain Cold, about why a guy would be a 2-bit cartoony criminal, then, patent his cold fusion gun to, create new forms of energy and be a trillionaire. I just thought, okay, you've helped me understand why this world exists of cartoon villains in a way that's serious and grounded, compared to the sort of classic pop shot psychology of, oh, why doesn't he just do that? He'd be a trillionaire if he just goes legit. It helps you understand the rationality. So that's what I pull from it.
Well, nice pick. It's really, really well done. And the published cover is pretty nice looking as well.
Yep. Thankfully, that was another piece from Cadence. So, for what it's worth, it's bittersweet, because I did get some good pieces from them. So it's always hard. Like, look, it's chaos. It's a mess. I don't know the nuances, but it is hard when you're like, wasn't for them, I wouldn't have had this piece.
Yeah, nope, I get it. I thought that, well, I won't talk about Cadence.
I know. I've
got to remove them from the crawl, because their site is offline. So
look, you probably know more than me, or a lot of people
actually
know more than me.
I happily know very little. I tend to keep my nose out of
fair enough,
like that. I think
it's one of those.
The less I know, the better.
It's one of those things where it's awkward, where you have to at least acknowledge where it came from, but you know that sort of history, it's good to stay there,
Mm-hmm. No, it's a good, something bad like that happens, and it certainly makes other people in the business take notice and probably take a little bit more care with their own businesses, and that's never a terrible thing. Now, this next piece is done by an artist who has a amazing CAF gallery. Phil Hester has one of the, he's got to have like one of the top 15, 20 CAF galleries out there as far as just quantity and quality of work. He's been in the, he's an amazing artist, but for the longest time, he's just had a great eye and amassed this wonderful collection of original art. And I need to get him back on the show to do an interview. I haven't had him. I think he was probably on before I did my interview with you. We had him on a Comic Art Live panel for only an hour, where he talked about pieces from his collection. But I'd like to do 2 shows with him. One where I can talk about his career, and the other one where we can really do a deeper dive into his art collection. But I've always loved his stuff, and this piece really stands out. It's all Phil, and it's as grotesque as it is. It's really an amazing piece of art. The construction of the page, the layout is fantastic.
So
and, I can see why you bought it.
Yeah, so this was from the comic book series crossover, which I thought was really one of those 1 in a million comic books, because again, when you get conditioned to Image Comics, it's like 900 different universes. Every individual comic, never shall the tween meet. And, here was crossover saying, hey, we're going to fuse it all together. Donnie Cates and, Jeff Shaw, they flew through the hurricane, and it was similar to, Steven Spielberg with Ready Player One. We're going to get Powers. We're going to get The Walking Dead. We're going to get Mad Men. We're going to get X. We're going to get Y. Like, if you read any independent comic book over the past 20 years, they were somehow reflected in this, book. And I was blown away. And, Phil had done one of the guest issues on the series while Jeff was, taking a break. And the issue was essentially about, Negan from The Walking Dead wanting to talk to Robert Kirkman and ask Robert Kirkman why he made his life so terrible. And, ultimately it ends with Negan saying, "You made me do terrible things." And I thought, how rare is it to have a cartoon character go after an actual writer, like for a creation to go after the creator? And I thought that was really fascinating to me. And, Negan is known for one thing above all, which is bashing people in the head with his barbed wire baseball bat, Lucille. And so for him to, get his revenge on Robert Kirkman, for Robert Kirkman to be in a comic book, I thought, wow, this page will probably get, sold to Robert, because I know Robert's a big comic art collector. And so the fact that I own this page, I'm like, wow, because this is one of those things where you're like, how rare is it to see this sort of scenario? It's hard to see this sort of scenario ever again. And again, I'm just lucky that Phil was able to cut a deal with me and sell it. And I'm really grateful to Phil for that.
Yeah, great pickup, definitely.
On a side note, I highly recommend for anyone who hasn't read, I believe it was, forgive me if I'm butchering the title, but Gotham City Year One, or you know what I'm talking about? The book where he did, where it was like the detective story.
I am not familiar with that.
It's essentially the story of Slam Bradley in his first year. And, what Phil does is he helps, take the story of the Lindbergh baby and explain it as the story of like a murder of, like the missing Wayne family baby. And it's really intriguing, has a lot of deep nuance to it. And really one of those like cool Black Label Elseworld stories you just need to read. Like, it's one of those stories that tries to explain why Gotham City is so dark and where the darkness came from.
Interesting. Well, I like the this is I don't know. Phil's one of the people who I really, really admire. I've always had I have owned a few pieces by Phil over the years, but I don't have anything in my collection now. But yeah, I'm gonna have to go back and take a look at what's out there.
One day I want to take this to a convention to get Robert Kirkman to sign it, just to see how he'll react. Like, sometimes you just want to bring a piece to a collector, a creator, just to be like, I just want to see how they'll react, even if they don't want to sign it, just to be like, I just want him to see it because I know he's read this book. So I just want to see his reaction in person.
Well, like you said, he is a collector, so he'll appreciate it, even if he doesn't like the end result, of what happened to him in it. I
mean, put it this way, he had to have signed off on it. I'll just say how much. There's no way he did not sign off on
this. That is totally true.
So
this is the other computer generated piece, and it's from a book called Radiant Black.
Yep.
Is it Marcelo Costa?
Hold up, let me look up. I want to get his name right because I love this guy. Also, thank you to those who've been, sending me likes and favorites, as we've been, talking. Marcelo Costa.
Marcelo, there we go.
So, kind of like what I was talking about with the previous artist proof of failsafe. When I go for one digital art, pieces, it has to be for a very special reason. Like no other physical art exists, or it's, a very key moment. And this happened to be the first appearance in comic of Radiant Black. Radiant Black, to me, is one of the most brilliant comic book series that has come out from Image in a while. Because it is a comic book about a guy and his best friend, as you see in the background. They become this hero. And it tries to answer the question of how are you a hero in the millennial age? How do you fight crime and save the day, yet also put food on the table? How do you support yourself? And these are questions, many like me think about. How can you do these amazing things, yet pay the rent, pay your utility bills? How do you function when half the day you're in another city, stopping like some supervillain. And so I love this series that much. The page wasn't done originally. It was done digitally because that's just sort of the nature of the beast. And so when they said, this is your chance to own the piece that reflects the first appearance, I had to go all in on it. It was for a very reasonable price, nothing crazy, enough where you're like, okay, I'll take a flyer on it. It's like you ask any Major League Baseball GM, like, they'll spend $10 million on a good, seventh or eighth inning reliever. They won't spend $30 or $40 million a year on a middle of the game reliever. And again, I thought it was very well done. The artist proof, the quality they used was very nice, to a point where I'm like, this feels like a painting. And again, when you do digital art, it should be for a very special reason. It should be because you love something so much that it's purely with your heart. And, look, I think Marcelo, and, whenever anyone does one-of-one artist proofs, especially in this hobby, they're very calm. They're very calculated. They're, saying this is the only one-of-one time I will do it, because they know if they do this again, they will get criticized for it heavily. And look, that's happened to original art. Look at the Jack Kirby, recreations that were sold in Sotheby's. Who knows if that was actually Jack Kirby or Jack Kirby was just sitting there at the time. So for me, digital art it's like the sprinkles on the sundae, or the cherry, or the hot fudge, but it's not the actual ice cream. I think there is a place at the table, but again, compared to someone who took the longer path, you got to respect the person who took the longer path. But at the same time, if you took the shorter path, that was the path available to you, and you have to respect that.
Sure, I agree. And I've heard a lot of great things about Radiant Black, and I should find a way to pick up a copy or read it online, because I have heard that many nice things about it.
I mean, I'll frame it this way, speaking about digital art, you got to avoid nuclear. If there's one lesson I can impart to anyone in this hobby, avoid nuclear thinking. Avoid, going be all end all to extremes, because fundamentally, when you take nuclear thoughts, it can be irrational. And to me, my take with digital art is like, look, I'm not, totally on board with it, but I understand it. And I understand the ecosystem. I understand the world of NFTs. You just gotta, in my opinion, let people at the table if they're bringing in something different, because God willing, if we, embrace more digital artists, that may inspire more physical artists to do something really cool in their own perspective. So again, my whole take is let everyone have a spot at the table, because sometimes it will really surprise you, when you open your mind.
Here, here. Now, next up. This is, I've always liked Gary Frank's work. I mean, there's a lot of other books that people might think about Gary first, but when he's working on something that he's created, I think he always puts a little extra effort into it. And this piece is wonderful. I'm sure it's pretty amazing to behold. There's just a lot of detail in this piece that we probably can't really see in the scan.
Oh, indeed. I mean,
awesome.
If I'm at a convention I'll bring the piece with me so you can see it, because, talking with Gary Frank, I have two real pieces from him. One was from Doomsday Clock, which, as a Watchmen fan, I needed to get my Doomsday Clock, 9-panel page. I got it. Really happy with that. But, with Geiger, I was like, the hard thing with Gary Frank is, they just auction off every single page, and you don't know which page is up next. Could be a panel page, could be a giant splash, could be this, could be that. And you don't know the sequence because, look, I have a lot going on. I can't keep track of every single eBay auction every single week. It's when there's one thing to be dedicated to this hobby. There's another thing where you're like, I do not want to be deemed a stalker in any sense of the word. And, To me, what I loved about this was it was one of the few full splashes that Gary was doing. And the fact that this is done in pen and ink, yet it looks like there's light. Just the way he was able to contrast the dark with the light on this to really make you feel the page glows, even though it's just pen and ink. That's fascinating to me. Like he somehow found a way to do illumination on a black and white pen and ink page. I mean, how complicated is that? And I think there's just something about it where you feel a bit scared, but also intrigued because you did not think this was possible to be done on pen and ink. And when you see something where you look at it and you're like, okay, I cannot discount this guy's skills, you have to get it. You have to pull the trigger. You have to go for it. And yeah, I was just lucky. I put a big bid on it. Thankfully, the auction didn't hit my max bid or exceed it. I just pulled the trigger. And thankfully, I won. And I was just so happy I won it at that time. Also, apologies to Chris Bailey. I know he was the underbidder on this. But when I showed Chris how committed I was to getting this page, he was like, I understand.
Yeah, I did a lot to promote Gary's auctions over the years, and he was actually the first person to ever send me a piece of artwork, and it was of Giger, and it was cool. At the time, I didn't know who the character was. But I'm like, well, this is cool, and it's really nice because it had a nice note in it saying thank you for promoting my eBay auctions all these years. I wanted to send you something, and at the time, I was flattered. I had no idea that people were even really paying that kind of attention to what we were doing to promote sales and whatnot for people. I mean, it wasn't, obviously I never singled Gary out, but his stuff he was always having like 5 or 6 auctions going every week, I think. Yep. And, but yeah, that's cool. He always, his stuff is great. Even his Superman stuff is fantastic. Mm-hmm. I've always enjoyed anything that he does.
Also, on a side note, just at this point, I want to shout out to Carl Choi, Dinesh Shamdasani, Michael Hansen Satari, all you guys. They've been collecting, friends of mine, Chris Bailey as well. If I'm missing anything, please say something. And to Marcus, by the way, I have to say thank you. The fact that he's commented on a lot of my pages that I've posted, I'm like, I really take the time that you wrote something out that was very eloquent, that helped justify why I do what I do. So just want to give you guys a personal shout out for saying thank you and helping me embrace my irrationality in this hobby.
Here. That's something that I enjoy seeing happen on CAF every single day.
Yeah.
Now, the next piece is something by James Heron, if I'm not mistaken. I'm trying to look at the order of things here. Oh yeah, from Ultra Mega. This is this is a really cool layout on this page, and even for a crazy moment like this, but it's wonderfully executed, and as only James can do it.
So yeah, with this Ultra Mega, look, we all know James, we all know the skill he brings. He's the mad scientist. He's brilliant. He's done some innovative techniques that Felix can point to X, Y, and Z and say they stole it from James. And look, this was the first book that, he did. I believe he, wrote and drew it, was Full Force. And, what's amazing about this book in its age of monsters and, madmen, it's a story about rage and letting go. And so I see this page and it's about this kid who has so much anger, so much frustration. And over the course of, 11 panels, because, 9 panels isn't enough for James, he lets go of his rage. And that to me is so amazing because people always underestimate the energy and effort it takes to let go of your anger and frustration, especially today. So, again, it's one of those special pages where I'm like, if I was to, show someone something from Ultra Mega to say, what is this book? They can look at this and say, there's something special here. It may not be the best detailed page of, James's Ultra Mega. I know he's detailed some brilliant kaiju. He's made some amazing splashes, but it's one of those pages where you just look at it and say, okay, this reflects the heart of the time, effort, and work James puts into his pages, his thought process. Again, he is one of those really special souls of the hobby that I'm really grateful that Felix and a bunch of people have helped bring up. He's a great guy, and you just want to see more of him, and you'll follow whatever he does, even if it's a variant cover, even if it's X or Y. You can tell the heart the guy brings to each page.
Yeah, so true. Now we're going to take a look at something by Mike Hawthorne next, and let me get this up on the screen.
Yeah, this one it's hard beautiful. To sort of close up on this. So I've always been a big Rick Remender guy. That's been always one of the through lines of one of those writers who always worked with a dream team of artists like Wayshak. If Corey is watching this later, just like he always has those crazy, outlandish premises that land. And, I always wanted something from Black Signs. And this page, I just love the sort of 1930s, War of the Worlds feel to it. You see the sort of, War of the Worlds, the sort of Greta Garbo poster, and I always love pages kind of like, or covers like Dawn Runner, that really show how you can manipulate scale, on a page. That to me is what's really special, when you can manipulate scale and have, some guy in the foreground be just as impressive as the giant mech in the background. And it's something you don't really see as much in modern comics today. You don't see something where you see your perspective shifting between what's in the lower right and what's in the upper left. So again, this is just one of those pieces where it was like the right price, the right time, everything about it works. And again, even if you don't know the comic book, if you were to see this cover, you'd be like, I'm intrigued. I want to know more.
No, exactly. When I saw this, I would never have thought Mike Hawthorne, and I don't know why. I mean, I like Mike's work a lot. Yeah. It just seems like he was really pushing himself on this one for, maybe he loved the storyline a bit more, or he was just trying to adapt himself to it. And there's just something about this piece where clearly he's pushing himself in a way that, I can't say that I can maybe look at other pieces by him on CAF and say, that he was doing that same kind of, I wouldn't say effort. There's just something special about this piece. And it's not just in the fact that it's this narrow image. It's the style, stylistically, it's great. And maybe it's because it's all him. I mean, I think most of the other pieces I see on CAF that aren't, say, con sketches are pencils only by Michael and then inked by somebody else. And obviously that's going to have a little bit to bear on his work. But he's an amazing inker too when you look at this piece here. It's
if you look at that link in my CAF gallery, you see the pencils and inks are separate. So, it's always cool when you get two of the same piece.
Oh, yeah. Heck yeah.
But again, it's just, what I will always, if there's another piece of advice I can impart, it's look at the variant covers, because even if, you feel priced out on going after the interior of a particularly hot comic, that hot comic will have so many variant covers that can be your gateway in. You look at Transformers, that can be your gateway into getting something. And these variant artists aren't, doing something that's, cheap or derivative. They are really bringing their passion and, power to these comics. So that's something I would always, say, always look to the variant artists to buy into a particular comic. If you feel like, you're just priced out because the main artist is, too expensive for your price range at a given time.
Mm-hmm. Now we got two more pieces to look at. Yep. This next one is John Romita Jr. and Klaus Janson, of course, a longtime great pairing, I think, of the many inkers that John Romita Jr. has had. Janson's probably one of my favorites on him, and I think that it really shows. This piece is phenomenal. I mean, it's got to look great in person.
Oh yeah, I mean, I remember it was It was something that, just popped up on Mike Berkey's art site, Romita Man, one day. And I was just like, wow, I need to get this. This is a clear, defining example of Romita and Jansen working together. Giant splash page, fairly priced. Everything just, in my mind, just hit all the tick marks. And, why I love it is that, it's not, you don't see it on the, published page, but, there was just something Iron Man was talking about where he was just talking about his past. And he said, I'm trying to do better now. That was the little word bubble on this page. I'm trying to do better now. And, again, you think of just John Romita Jr., all the great characters he's drawn, when you can point in something and say, this is a deluxe top tier example in a published book of something John has drawn, it really stands out. And so I feel really humbled to have this page, because this is, to me, a defining staple of John Romita at the peak of his powers. And he was always one of those guys you could always count on to deliver great work, still do. And I'm just really humbled and thankful to have this. And thank you to Mike Berkey for the opportunity.
That's very cool. Yeah, congrats on that. Berkey gets a lot of this stuff. You never know where or when something like this will show up. He's amazing in that way.
You should always just, always check out sites. Always look at the back catalog. I know, a lot of stuff goes and drops, but, you'd be surprised what's out there.
All right. Well, we're going to complete the set tonight with a piece by Ryan Stegman.
Ah, yes. Nemesis Reloaded.
Yeah, this is really well. This is like a classic image, right? Guy coming, falling out of a window, shards of glass, but Stegman just has, exactly. But Stegman's got a very dynamic approach to the figure, and he certainly put us in the right perspective with the buildings. You can't even see the ground. There's just so much stuff going on in there, but you got buildings on both sides of the guy. I mean, it's just dramatic in its design.
I mean, I will say this. Ryan Stegman, to me, is the Nolan Ryan of, comic art. This guy can deliver amazing pieces and literally churn out cover after cover, interior page after interior page. The man is a machine. Like, literally, to me, he's like the guy who his arm doesn't blow out because he's constantly doing amazing variant covers, amazing interior pages. Whether you know him from King in Black, Superior Spider-Man, X, Y, or Z, he always delivers, and at a capacity where there's enough art for everyone to go around. Kind of like John Romita Jr., one of the key reasons why a lot of people love JR is that there was always JR to go around. There was always the feeling he was always there. It wasn't something of the artist who you see for once every 3 years, because look, not to knock those artists, if that's what they need, that's what they need. But, you look at Steven Spielberg's career compared to, say, Stanley Kubrick. Spielberg is able to deliver a movie year after year after year. You look at, Kubrick was only able to do, I think, 10 movies over his entire lifetime. It just shows you the power. And for in particular, I've always had a soft spot for Nemesis. I thought it was one of Mark Millar's greatest creations. Just a supervillain that always wins in the most over-the-top way possible. And this was the start of, Mark Millar trying to tie all of his comic book characters in his universe together, that I need it. It ticks every box. And I was really lucky to have gone in the Felix art drop. I think I asked Felix, what drop is it going to be in, like 20 times, to a point where he was getting sick of me, because I just wanted to make sure that nothing got in the way of trying to go for this page. This cover. And again, it's every box of loving Nemesis, respecting the brilliant work of Ryan Stegman. And again, for a guy like Ryan to do this on a variant cover, that isn't King in Black or anything, to get this level of detail, it just shows you, like, Ryan is literally the Nolan Ryan. He is that sort of like once in a lifetime talent that can do things you did not thought was possible at the capacity, that you were told just does not exist anymore. So I have the utmost respect for Ryan. Really grateful to have this, and a real example of just why Ryan, in my opinion, is one of the best artists today.
Well, it's amazing and well said too. That's I think a lot of people like this. Well, a lot of people like Stegman's work, as you say.
Oh, yeah. It's not to take away from any other artists, mind you, but you have to respect Stegman's ability to constantly show up. He's like, to me, the John Cena. He shows up everywhere and always delivers.
Marcus just said Nolan Ryan Stegman. There we go.
That's an awesome name.
Oh shoot! Somebody's got to make it, a baseball jersey for him and put that on the back. That's great.
Yeah, he deserves it. I'll say that much.
Oh man, well, yeah, that's a great piece to end the set on tonight, Francis. No, good set there. So you're firmly done. The vault is closed, right? And there's no potential for before the end of the year.
Here's my ultimate message. If you want to reach out, come in with a firm offer. Like, think of it as, you own a house. If someone was to show up to your house and say, hey, I like your house, I want to buy your house, you'd be like, okay, well, but I'm not selling, so I don't know what to tell you. But if you hear some crazy, obscene offer, look, my take is don't be afraid to make an offer. Don't be afraid to put your foot forward. Because even if I say no, that's how you get known. That's how you get remembered, when it could be 1 year, 2 year, 10 years down the line. That's how you put yourself out there, and people won't be offended. They'll know, okay, this is someone interested. And that's not to manipulate psychology. That's just to, get yourself known in this hobby, because look, there can be a lot of intimidation. A lot of it can be, posturing. A lot of it can be people, who are defined, just like, I want to over promote, but just always put your best foot forward. And, look, no one's going to fault you for saying, hey, I want to buy your thing. This is what I'd be willing to pay. And again, if it's just like, look, I do my best to respond to every email. I'll always say, hey, not ready to sell, but if I do, I'll remember. And that's just how you go for it. Because again, it's one thing when you're Flipper McGee. I really hope that becomes a term. That would be hilarious. But to me, it's just, the question of, just putting your best foot forward and putting yourself out there. And that's just a common lesson you learn in life. Like, don't ask if the girl is dating someone, just go out and ask her, and then
That is so true. Marcus says he wonders what my shirt says on the back. We all know what it says on the back, Marcus. This is my Got Mannix shirt, and it says, what does it say on the back? There it is, right there. Thank you to Mikhail for putting this shirt together for me. And thank you, Francis, for hanging out with me tonight and doing this second interview 3 years after the first. But
really thankful for your time, Bill, and for keeping, and honestly, I don't think you get enough credit for how much you've put into this hobby, because, you've built a home and ecosystem for people like myself to just post their art, find other people, connect. And, look, this hobby can be a lonely one. Comic art is not something that's common, like, say, talking about the Yankees or the Oakland Athletics. That was for Felix. But, so thank you for creating a community where a lot of people can come together in a hobby that felt very small. To me, you're like the guy from The Walking Dead who really opened the door to the larger world of the Commonwealth and what have you.
Well, I appreciate that. It's a pleasure to hear that, honestly. I enjoy doing what I do around here. And if it wasn't for the wonderful community that we get to hang out with, CAF wouldn't be half as fun. So I've provided the tools, and everybody else has taken it to the level that it's gotten to. So, well, it's like Negan, says Marcus. No, I wouldn't. But you could say that if you like. Just not wielding a baseball bat. But again, Francis, thank you for doing this. It's always a pleasure, and
it's always a privilege. Conversely, so thank you for having me.
You're welcome. Well, everybody, thanks for hanging out with us tonight. I'll be back at it again tomorrow with another interview on Tuesday night, and look forward to doing that. But again, Francis, thank you. Everybody, have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you again soon.
Take care. Bye.